It's the Aubrey Show with our special guest star, Edgar Allan Poe. Maybe I shouldn't say that. Just as a bit of clarification, we do not have Edgar Allan Poe on the show today. And also, I'm sorry for having to use the headset. It just felt like it would be slightly better quality for what we're doing. Although it doesn't look official, which is why I never use it. Um, but anyways, how are all of you doing today? All of me rewatching this. I'm the only one who really watches these, which makes me feel very special deep down inside. Um, my day was good. Um, um, yeah, this got boring. Let's just trudge on. What's happening today, Aubrey? Well, what's happening is we will be reading some of the works of probably like my second, maybe third most favorite author. Um, definitely one of my favorite poets. Um, Edgar Allan Poe. Um, and for the record, Kafka is above him because I don't know. Do I have to justify myself on that? I don't know. But I love Edgar Allan Poe. I'm currently learning about him for class. He's a terrible fucking human being, but goddamn, does he write good poetry? Um, and I got a book of his right here with me that cost like $10 and came with a lot of stuff. So, seeing as I have literally nothing better to do, let's read. Let's read some Poe, read some good literature. Who knows? Maybe I'll review it after. Maybe I fucking won't. I, my life is spent in a chase of a goal that I will never truly acquire, and that goal is happiness. I had it once. Okay, so the story that we will be reading today, at least first, maybe last. I don't know how long it is. It seems like it's long. But this is all just short stories and poems, so it can't be too long. It's Mesmeric Revelation. Mesmeric Revelation. And I actually haven't. I've only read like the top 15 most popular Edgar Allan Poe poems and stories. So I don't have a lot of his bad work in my brain, or any of it, which is kind of funny to think about. Um, so let's just read. Let's just read something that I've never read before by this guy. Whatever doubt may still envelop the rationale of mesmerism, its startling facts are now almost universally admitted. Of these latter, those who doubt are your mere doubters by profession, an unprofitable and disreputable tribe. There can be no more absolute waste of time than the attempt to prove at the present day that man, by mere exercise of will, can so impress his fellow as to cast him into an abnormal condition, of which the phenomena resemble very closely those of death, or at least resemble them more nearly than they do the phenomena of any other normal condition within our cognizance. That, while in this state, the person is so impressed employs only with effort and then feebly the external organs of sense, yet perceives with keenly refined perception, and through channels supposed unknown, matters beyond the scope of physical organs. That, moreover, his intellectual faculties are wonderfully exalted and invigorated, that his sympathies with the person so impressing him are profound, and, finally, that his susceptibility to the impression increases with its frequency, while, in the same proportion, the peculiar phenomena elicited are more extended and more pronounced. I'm going to be completely honest, that one took me by surprise. Is that just one sentence? I don't even understand that, actually. Wait. Jesus. Maybe it's because I'm reading it aloud. Jesus. Okay. Um. So this is like a paragraph of a sentence with a couple of semicolons. Because why break it up? You're already pretty engaged with it. And I didn't. Fuck it. I'll go English teacher on this. Okay. So the first two sentences, they're pretty easy. They're pretty cut up for you. Um, you know, there's doubt about mesmerism, but you gotta admit it works. And then, of those who doubt, just people whose job is to doubt, they're fucking dicks. They're always gonna doubt. See, yeah, what are you gonna do? Um, okay, and then he just kind of goes on to describe the effects of mesmerism a bit. It's like, um, there's a lot of your physical organs become feeble, but your mental stuff is like reaching beyond. Connecting with the person who mesmerized you. Um, let's just move on and try and make. Jesus, that was really mean for no reason. Why would he write that? I'm kidding. He's Edgar Allan Poe. Okay. I say that these, which are the laws of mesmerism in its general features, it would be a super. I don't come across this very often. This is genuinely a word that I have no fucking clue what it is. Um, would be supervergation to demonstrate. I'm gonna look that up real quick. For those who want to play along at home, that's super o gation, as in the end of interrogation. It's actually a lot like interrogation, but with super in front of inter. Wait. The performance of more work than duty requires. Jesus Christ. Okay. Why did I choose? This is what's the word for emasculate but feminine? This is effeminating me on stream. On just fucking. It's been 6 minutes. I've gotten through a paragraph. It's stripping my rights to English teacher. Okay. I say that these, which are the laws of mesmerism and its general features, so it's just stating the laws of mesmerism. It would be supererogation to demonstrate. So it would be more work than needed to demonstrate those. Nor shall I inflict upon my readers so needless a demonstration today. Probably could have just read ahead and used context, but fuck it, I looked up the word. Uh, my purpose at present is a very different one indeed. I am impelled, even in the teeth of a world of prejudice, to detail without comment the very remarkable substance of colloquy occurring between a sleepwaker and myself. Maybe Poe shouldn't have been the first choice here. I don't know how much I should be explaining, um, but at least I understand it now. Um, so he's doing something different in this piece than just explaining what the fuck mesmerism is, because people know that. Um, he is going to. Why does he mention teeth? he is going to. Um, he's going to detail. Uh, I guess the similarities between a sleepwaker and himself, which is very interesting. We'll see where that goes. And I might have gotten that wrong, but that's the most I can get from using the word colloquy. I had been long I had been long in the habit of mesmerizing the person in question, Mr. Vankirk. I forgot that this was a fiction story. Okay. Shut the fuck up, cat. Go away. Um, Mr. Vankirk, and the usual acute susceptibility and exaltation of the mesmeric perception that supervened. For many months he had been laboring under confirmed phthisis, the more distressing effects of which had been relieved by my manipulations. And on the night of Wednesday, the 15th instant, I was summoned to his bedside. Okay, so in this story, Poe is able to mesmerize people, which I didn't know. He might be able to do that. I didn't read it in his biography. Um, but I doubt it. I think that this is a fiction. Um, and yeah, he'd been laboring under a disease, and Poe is here to help out a little bit with his little mesmerization. So, on the 15th time that this disease, rears its head when symptoms show through, he's summoned to his bedside, where the story takes place, I'd imagine. The invalid, the invalid was suffering with. I forgot that you could just call people that. The invalid was suffering with acute pain in the region of the heart, and breathed with great difficulty, having all the ordinary symptoms of asthma. In spasms such as these, he had usually found relief from the application of mustard to the nervous centers, but tonight this had been attempted in vain. I'm not going to ask why mustard was the solution to that. I'm not a doctor. As I entered his room, he greeted me with a cheerful smile, and although evidently in much bodily pain, appeared to be, at least mentally, quite at ease. I sent for you tonight, he said, not so much to administer my bodily ailment as to satisfy me with concerning certain psychical impressions which, of late, have occasioned me much anxiety and surprise. I need not tell you how skeptical I have hitherto been on the subject of the soul's immortality. I cannot deny that there has always existed, as if in that very soul which I have been denying, a vague half sentiment of its own existence. But this half sentiment at no time amounted to conviction. With it, my reason had nothing to do. With it, my reason had nothing to do. Sorry, I'm adding the wrong tone, so I'm trying to go back and fix that. I don't know what I'm doing here. All attempts at logical inquiry resulted, indeed, in leaving me more skeptical than before. I had been advised to study Cousin. I studied him in his own works, as well as in those of his European and American echoes. The Charles Elwood of Mr. Brownson, for example, was placed in my hands. I read it with profound attention. Throughout I found it logical, but the portions which were not merely logical were unhappily the initial arguments of the disbelieving hero of the book. In his summing up, it seemed evident to me that the reasoner had not even succeeded in convincing himself. His end had plainly forgotten his beginning, like the government of Trinculo. In short, I was not long in perceiving that if man is to be intellectually convinced of his own immortality, he will never be so convinced by the mere abstractions which have been so long the fashion of the moralists of England, of France, and of Germany. Abstractions may amuse and exercise, but take no hold on the mind. Here upon earth, at least, philosophy, I am persuaded, will always in vain call upon us to look upon qualities as things. The will may assent, the soul, the intellect, never. So that's actually a really interesting passage. I don't know when I turned this into a literary analysis. um, but yeah, so this sick guy has been, he's called Bo to his bedside to rest a mental inquiry. Um, he's been he's been reading the works of Cousin, who I do not personally like. That doesn't ring a bell with me. I'm not super into philosophy. I really just read Camus. Um, but he's been reading through it. Um, and he thinks it's cool. Uh, but he thought certain parts were cool, the rest of it not really. It's badly structured, couldn't find its beginning and its end, and whatever. And he thinks that having these abstractions really weakened it because he doesn't believe abstractions to be yeah, he just doesn't, he doesn't feel moved by abstractions, which is interesting because a lot of art is abstractions. So it's really interesting to see that. And I do wonder whether he considers experiences abstractions because that would really rule out all art, I think. But if he considers his own personal experience as not an abstraction because it's no longer an abstraction when he's experienced it, then I'd imagine that that actually informs a very interesting way of viewing art, which probably isn't important, but we'll see what happens in the story. I repeat, then, that I only half felt and never intellectually believed, but laterally there has been a certain deepening of the feeling, until it has come so nearly to resemble the acquiescence of reason that I find it difficult to distinguish between the two. I am enabled, too, plainly to trace this effect on the mesmeric influence. I cannot better explain my meaning than by hypothesis that the mesmeric exaltation enables me to perceive a train of ratiocincation, which, in my abnormal existence, convinces, but which, in full accordance with the mesmeric phenomena, does not extend, except through its effect, into my normal condition. In sleep waking, the reason, the reasoning and its conclusion, the cause and its effect, are present together. In my natural state, the cause vanishing, the effect only, and perhaps only partially, remains. Side note, did people actually talk like this back then? Like, sometimes I read Poe and I'm like, it would have been fun to be back then, Because, like, what if people did actually talk like this? You would be surrounded by people who spoke so cool. But there's no fucking way, right? Jesus Christ, this guy is going off for like 5 paragraphs on how much he fucking needs this. I mean, I guess it's an interesting thing. Like, why not go off on 5 paragraphs about specifically this? Anything else, though? Jesus. Okay. Um. So he's going to. So he doesn't. Abstractions, or what I personally view as art, can't really take hold in him. But with the mesmeric influence that Poe provides, as he can mesmerize people in this, um, he believes that the art does take hold of it, and he wants Poe to, you know, mesmerize him so that he can learn philosophy and, do all those great things that come with solving your own personal philosophy, which I'm convinced nobody has ever done. So, anyways, these considerations have led me to think that some good results might ensue from a series of well directed questions propounded to me while mesmerized. You have often observed the profound self cognizance evinced by the sleepwaker, the extensive knowledge he displays upon all points relating to the mesmeric condition itself, and from the self cognizance may be deduced hints for the proper conduct of a catechism. I'm going to guess that says catechism. Let's look that up real quick. Thank you for autocorrect. Jesus fuck. Why is that so specific? Oh, okay. Never mind. Um, so it's the summary of the principles of Christian religion in the form of questions and answers used for the instruction of Christians, but it has been adopted by multiple people, which I'm all for. I'm going to include this in a poem in the future. I just realized. I'll take that as a note. Um, real quick. Oh dear. I could have read like a children's book. Okay. Should I have cut by now? No. No, I should not have. I consented, of course, to make this experiment. A few passes through. So, for the record, that was the end of the quotation marks. So it's now back to Poe. I consented, of course, to make this experiment. A few passes threw Mr. Vankirk into the Mesmeric's sleep. His breathing became immediately more easy, and he seemed to suffer no physical uneasiness. The following conversation then ensued. V in the dialogue representing the patient, and P myself. You can see how that could be confusing. Like penis and vagina. No? Okay. Poe, are you asleep? Vankirk. Yes. No, I would rather sleep more soundly. Poe, after a few more passes. Do you sleep now? Vankirk. Yes. Poe, how do you think your present illness will result? Vankirk, after a long hesitation and speaking as if with effort. I must die. Poe, does the idea of death afflict you? Vankirk, very quickly. No, no. Poe, are you pleased with the prospect? Vankirk, if I were awake, I should like to die, but now it is no matter. The mesmeric condition is so near death as to content me. I wish you to explain yourself, Mr. Vankirk. I am willing to do so, but it requires more effort than I feel able to make. You do not question me properly. What then shall I ask? You must begin at the beginning. The beginning? But where is the beginning? You know that the beginning is God. What then is God? I cannot tell. Is not God spirit? While I was awake, I knew what you meant by spirit, but now it seems only a word. For such instance as truth, beauty, quality, I mean. Is not God immaterial? There is no immateriality. It is a mere word. That which is not matter, not at all, unless qualities are things. Is God, then, material? No. What, then, is he? I see, but it is a difficult thing to tell. He is not spirit, for he exists, nor is he matter, as you understand it, but there are graduations of matter of which man knows nothing. The grosser impelling the finer pervading the grosser. The atmosphere, for example, impels the electric principle, while the electric principle permeates the atmosphere. These graduations of matter increase in rarity or fineness until we arrive at a matter unparticled, without particles, indivisible. One and here the law of impulsion and permeation is modified. The ultimate, or unparticled matter, not only permeates all things, but impels all things, and thus is all things within itself. This matter is God. What men attempt to embody in the word thought is this matter in motion. The metaphysicians maintain that all action is reducible to motion and thinking, and that the latter is the origin of the former. Yes, and now I see the confusion of the idea. Motion is the action of mind, not of thinking. The unparticled matter, or God, in quiescence, is, as nearly as we can conceive it, what men call mind. And the power of self-movement, equivalent in effect to human volition, is, in the unparticled matter, the result of its unity and omniprevalence. How, I know not, and now clearly see that I shall never know. But the unparticled matter, set in motion by law or quality existing within itself, is thinking. Can you give me no more precise idea of what you term the unparticled matter? The matters of which man is cognizant escape the senses in graduation. We have, for example, a metal, a piece of wood, a drop of water, the atmosphere or gas, caloric electricity, the luminiferous ether. Now, we call all these things matter, and embrace all matter in one general definition. But in spite of this, there can be no two ideas more essentially distinct than what we attach to a metal and that which we see and that which we attach to the luminiferous ether. When we reach the latter, we feel an almost irresistible inclination to class it with spirit, or with nihility. The only consideration which restrains us is our conception of its atomic constitution, and here, even, we have to seek aid in our notion from our notion of an atom as something possessing an infinite minuteness, solidity, palpability, weight. Destroy the idea of the atomic constitution, and we shall no longer be able to regard the ether as an entity, or at least as matter. For want of a better word, we might term it spirit. Take now a step beyond the lumiferous ether. I'm really struggling with that. Sorry, I broke character. Conceive of matter as much more rare than in the ether, and as this ether is more rare than the metal, and we arrive at once, in spite of all the school dogmas, at a unique mass, an unparticled matter. For although we may admit infinite littleness in the atoms themselves, the infinitude of littleness in the spaces between them is an absurdity. There will be a point, there will be a degree of rarity, at which, if the atoms are sufficiently numerous, the interspaces must vanish, and the mass absolutely coalesce. But the consideration of the atomic constitution is being now taken away. The nature of the mass inevitably guides to what we conceive of as spirit. It is clear, however, that it is as fully matter as before. The truth is, it is impossible to conceive spirit, since it is impossible to imagine what is not. When we flatter ourselves that we have formed in its conception, we have merely deceived our understanding by the consideration of infinitely rarefied matter. Okay. Christ almighty. This is gonna... So, I am going to try and explain this because this is not a story. I am not reading you a story, it doesn't seem. I think that I'm just reading you what Poe was thinking, and then he just assigned it onto a character, but I'm not too sure about that. Okay. So this guy goes into mesmeration. He doesn't care about death, but he knows that he is going to die. Poe asks him about God. This guy doesn't think that God is immaterial. He thinks that he is very much material, just a different type of material, just a different, gradient of material on the scale. It gets really complicated. Um, hmm, hmm. So the idea is that ether, luminiferous ether, which I can't really say too well, we classify it as immateriality, as spirit, along with stuff like God. But in actuality, is simply another state of matter. Um, it's same as metal, but on a different plane, which as we know now, isn't necessarily true. There's just no proof to say that ether is a thing. But there's also no proof to say that there isn't just ether floating around. So fuck it. Um, And he talks about atoms, if they get infinitely small, the spaces between them disappear, which is an interesting concept. I believe that that's, I don't know, I'm not a science nerd. I believe that that's how atoms actually work, which is pretty cool. Like the spaces between them are so minute, but they don't actually touch, so I guess he's wrong there. Who knew that? A poet could be wrong about such things. Christ. Um, I don't even remember which part I read to. It's like 30 minutes into recording. Okay. Okay. What I'll do, I'm just gonna read through the rest of this. Feel free to read it online. I'm genuinely sorry about this, but I did not expect this to be the most fucking complicated thing in the goddamn world. Um, I'm gonna read through the rest of this. I'm gonna try and explain it to you as best as I can, and then we're gonna wrap this up. So, once again, I'm very sorry for not reading the whole thing, which is kind of a dick move, but that would have genuinely taken forever. It took, yeah, it took me like 10 minutes just to finish that on my own, because I had to fucking think about it. Um, it was very pal, um, to say the least. Jesus. I don't know if he knows what he's talking about at all, philosophy wise. He talked about a lot of philosophy in this thing, and I mean, the story, Mesmeric Revelation, from my point of view, was just an excuse for Poe to pretend that he knows about philosophy, which, I mean, all poets love to do. Um, it ends with the person he's mesmerizing coming back from the mesmerization, hypnosis, and dying, leading Poe to believe that he may have been talking to a dead man, which is very, very, that's fun. I like that. Um, but yeah, it's a lot of one thing that I will say that this reveals that I quite love about old-timey philosophy, um, is that so much of it was just poetry that people genuinely believed, and it's the most entertaining shit, you know? Because it can be anything. And people will be like, yeah, I'll make that my way of going about life. What can I say though? I'm an absurdist. Read any sort of old philosophy essays and you will see this. They are poetry on steroids. It's a wonderful time. Um, Camus specifically, read The Myth of Sisyphus. It's great. You'll learn a lot. And as for Mesmeric Revelation fucking rating, I give it a 6 out of 10. Only read it if you like Poe, and I and or if you just really want to learn about that specific philosophy for some reason. I don't even know if he ever talks about it again ever. um, and your homework for today is to I don't know, read some poetry. Read some poetry. Love that. I wish that I could have read some poetry today, but instead I read a poorly disguised philosophy essay. Bye. Bye. I love you guys. Scoop it up, boop I like Edgar Allan Poe, and I'm a nerd. So this is the reason for this episode. I'm sorry.